how do you want to be remembered?
I mean, if I die?
Everything just goes away. How would you, if you could be associated with one thing, how would you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror.
They can put us in prison. They can shoot us. They can lock us up, but they will not stop us now.
Battle lines for new world order based on power are being drawn right now. We are on the brink, if not even at the start, of another global health crisis.
Действия Вашингтона в этом направлении отчетливо демонстрируют одну из главных американских задач. Они очень хотят решить проблему снижения доверия к доллару.
Those who are full of anger and hopelessness and hate right now, some of them protesting outside this hall today, unfortunately, they do not have the spiritual happiness that Charlie experienced. They're empty. And this is where their anger is coming from. It is their rejection of God, their desire to be God, and therefore they have made God their enemy.
I'm going to try and keep the smile going because obviously it's been a tragic few days with the assassination of Charlie Kirk and the way that that has changed the world, in my opinion, absolutely forever. It's tough to talk about, but the reality is that this is going to affect the finance world. This is going to affect, obviously, politics and culture and so many different things. And we often, and in fact every week, we talk about the clash between politics and finance here at Radio Australia when it comes to being part of the greater wealth. Let's jump into the show, mate. What do you want to cover today?
I think Charlie Kirk's death, and condolences to the family and friends, and it's such a small globe at this time. I don't think it's going to have a direct effect on economies, but we might see some indirect things coming out of this, and I think that's what we need to highlight here, because what has really been highlighted is the effect it's had globally. Mm-hmm. On people's consciousness and fights for freedom. Okay. And we've seen, Charlie kind of stood for faith, family, and freedom, and freedom of speech per se, and protecting those rights. And there's been a concerted effort by the socialists and the globalists to go from gathering wealth but power. We've seen that over it's never been more evident in our lives. And if you want examples of this, control economic freedoms. Okay, we're seeing that play out. Control political freedoms, control educational freedoms, control freedom of information, freedom of families, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom of health and bodily autonomy. I could go on and on. This has been the socialist agenda, and we're seeing that the socialists and globalists are really fighting for power and trying to hang on with tooth and nail. And yet in the hearts of humanity is this fight for freedom. This is a spiritual war that we're witnessing here. If you have a look at the images that have come out of London over the weekend, I mean, astonishing. We've got some footage right now.
We do. This is it's just jaw-dropping, isn't it? It really is.
There's been estimates that it was up to 3 million people gathering in London, and I think it's been highlighted. You got to look at this. This is not culturally what the English particularly do. You want to solve something? Let's have a cup of tea. And when you see the astounding numbers, and this camera shot just keeps going on and on and on and on and on. It doesn't stop. It's just phenomenal how many people are in this. You contrast this over what's happened in Nepal recently as well, where they burnt down their parliament, dragged their foreign the ministers through the streets in one case and situation. It's just people are fighting. We're not advocating violence and this sort of stuff. We're just certainly observing what's going on here in relation to people wanting to say, we've got to do this for our kids and our future. It's extraordinary, these pictures that we've witnessed.
This is the time we've got to step up, and these pictures are you're spot on. I mean, extraordinary is the understatement. The fact that the mainstream media are saying 100,000 people. I mean, seriously, go back to school, get yourself an abacus if that's that basic. We're talking about, I mean, I've heard estimates between 1 and 3 million people in the UK, and I would comfortably, I mean, it's comfortably in that range. No question about it.
Massive. Yeah. And if you have a listen to some of the speeches, I mean, Katie Holmes, it was extraordinary that what she said. Let's have a quick listen to this, and then I'll build on that.
And they have tried to silence us. They took my friend Tommy and they put him in prison. They took my friend Charlie and they shot him. They tried to take my children and they deported my ass from Australia. And I say fuck the Australians for that. But it doesn't matter. They can put us in prison. They can shoot us. They can lock us up, but they will not stop us now. Because we are not here because we hate. We are not here because we want bad things for other people. We are here because we grew up knowing freedoms, and we will get those freedoms back for our kids and our grandchildren. Yes, we will.
Now, normally Katie uses satire to get her message across. She was very serious on that one. And she's referring to Tommy Robinson, who did solitary confinement in prison over all sorts of different charges and that sort of thing. We saw, of course, the reference to the Charlie Kirk, and it's really interesting, this cry for freedom that's going on globally around the earth right now, where they are fighting for freedom of speech primarily right now. But there's a bigger play at hand here. And you were going to say something.
Oh, look, just purely, it is a worldwide phenomenon what's going on right now. Yeah. And that's just what people need to realise. When you see people standing up in a little, country town Perth with rallies and demonstrations and so forth, we are part of something very, very big here. And I say that because wherever you're in small town in the US, or you're somewhere in the middle of Europe, this is the time we need to stand up. We all need to stand up, because this is not happening in one country or one county or one state. This is a global agenda, and it is absolutely unfolding in front of your eyes. You need to act. And if you don't act, as far as I'm concerned, you are betraying your children and your grandchildren. This is your time to step up.
So the socialists have for years focused on the wealth and gathering the wealth. Now it's shifted into control over the last few years, and wanting to control through wealth and all these sort of things. Now, I want to have a look at this. To understand it from where it's going, America is in trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt.
Yes.
But have a look what the Russians are saying regarding this, what they're anticipating Trump's next move will be to solve the trillions and trillions dollars worth of debt. Now, why do I say this? Because debt is the thing that is enslaving the United States right now. You've got to remember this principle, right? He who is in debt is debt to the lender. Okay, you're a slave to the lender. That actually goes back to the ancient book there. When you look at this,
none of this is new.
Yeah.
Okay, this has all happened before.
And so this is what they've had. They've created a system by which America is enslaved to them. Take a look at how they think or speculating that Trump might get out of this. Have a look.
Америка прямо сейчас пытается поменять правила на рынке золота и криптовалют. Вспомните, какой у них долг. 35 триллионов долларов. В общем-то, это два альтернативных валютному сегменту мировых рынка. Действия Вашингтона в этом направлении отчетливо демонстрируют одну из главных американских задач. Они очень хотят решить проблему снижения доверия к доллару. США, как это было и в 30-е, и в 70-е годы, будут решать свои финансовые проблемы за счет всего мира, загоняя всех куда? В криптовалютное облако. Со временем, когда часть госдолга США будет размещена в стейблкоинах, США обесценит этот долг. Еще раз простыми словами. У них сейчас валютный 35-триллионный долг, они его загоняют в крипту, в облако, обесценивают и начинают с нуля. Это для тех, кто очень любит заниматься криптой.
So I don't fully agree with what he said there, but I've watched this play out, and they're basically saying we believe that this push into cryptocurrency and precious metals, gold and silver, and that will move America and devalue, as the US dollar devalues, they'll pay off that debt with a new currency. And I've wondered about this because we've seen history do this. I mean, Abraham Lincoln's greenbacks was at that kind of play when he issued, how am I going to fund this civil war? You issue your own currency that's government backed, and you say that it's able to settle taxes. You'll solve the issue. That's what he did, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, okay, and I'm interested in your opinion about this. Back in the early 70s, when Nixon took off the gold standard, you know, is that some sort of way of trying to abolish, just keep printing money, and that way we can solve that debt issue?
Oh, totally. Well, it was more of a control. We can print to the cows come home. We can just keep printing. We've got a free money now, and because it wasn't backed by anything.
That's right.
And what the key is here is the Genius Act that Trump has just passed has brought America to one, recognized digital coins and digital cryptocurrency as legitimate currency. Number two, that stablecoins must be backed by something. Now, that can be, you know, either US Treasury notes, or they can be gold, silver, those kind of whatever assets they are. But the third one is that it's allowed the crypto companies and also tech companies to be issuers of currency, not bringing the Federal Reserve to the table and discussion on this. And this is the big thing. They haven't been invited to the roundtables to talk about this. Only the cryptocurrency companies have been.
That's so curious in itself, right?
And that is fascinating that they've been left out of the party. And so this is highly significant when you see that this banking cartel, so to speak, has been controlling the system for so many years.
You've used the right word. It is a cartel.
Yeah.
Okay, the Reserve Bank is so, look, I want to use the term illegitimate. I wanted to use other terms, but I'll use illegitimate. But it has been controlling the world markets for so long and pushing different countries around with their currency. We go back to the end of World War II and your petrodollar and all this sort of carry on. There is a very small amount of people who are controlling billions of us, and this isn't a game here. These are people's lives.
Ursula von der Leyen has come out and said, you know, we must push for a new reset.
This summer showed us that there is simply no room or no time for nostalgia. Battle lines for a new world order based on power are being drawn right now. So yes, Europe must fight for its place in the world, in which many major powers are either ambivalent or openly hostile to Europe, a world of imperial ambitions and imperial wars, a world in which dependencies are ruthlessly weaponized. And it is for all these reasons that a new Europe must emerge.
I do want to highlight this one, and it kind of rings alarm bells because I mentioned, you know, there's the economics, but there's also control. And is this speech leading towards control? Take a look at this.
Let's have a look.
We are on the brink, if not even at the start, of another global health crisis. And as a medical doctor by training, I'm appalled by the disinformation that threatens global progress on everything from measles to polio. And this is why today I can announce that the European Union will head a new global health resilience initiative.
If you look at that, it shows the next play of what they're trying to do.
Oh, we always need a good pandemic, don't we? Oh, geez. I'm sitting here, and to be absolutely frank, I've got a lot going on off the screen here, so I'm trying to sort of work things out here. There is so much going on in the world right now. We have so many, as they keep saying, I love the term bad actors, I do, but it's kind of like the financial world has been and money has been controlled, and the wealth has been controlled. What's the next step? What do you need after that? And that is just literally control of the people. It is a next step of life as a psychopath.
There's an interesting basic tweet, if we call them that, on X now. Now that doesn't call Twitter, but if we have a look at this, I'm expecting more to come out of this. There's a fascinating thing that somebody's asked Grok, and it's called the Pfizer Gate. The Pfizer Gate scandal.
Let's have a look at that. All right.
And it says it involves the EU Commission, President Ursula von der Leyen's role in negotiating a major COVID-19 vaccine deal with Pfizer. She exchanged text messages with CEO Albert Bourla. And then somebody has put there on top of that, Krill Adamtriv, that as Trump team investigates mRNA vaccines, it may actually uncover the infamous deleted correspondence between Pfizer CEO and Ursula Pfizer von der Leyen.
Yes.
Will probably be an interesting read. And so, yeah, and then down the rabbit warren here. It's going to be really interesting how this plays out, because the truth has a sneaky way of coming out, particularly in this age of the internet. And as governments try to censor it, which we're seeing this move in Australia play out with this whole, we want you to prove that, you're over 16 years of age to go on social media. Here, get a digital ID. And so we know who's uploading what, etc. It's funny because at that big rally in London over the weekend, one of the people they crossed over to was Elon Musk.
Yes, he had a few things to say.
And Elon was wearing the T-shirt there, George Orwell.
Yes,
thank you.
there we go.
Thank
there
you,
we
Google.
go. We got our oars wrong. They're clearly not in the water at the moment. No worries. But
So yeah, he was wearing a Williard T-shirt saying, George would be so proud of you guys today and all this sort of thing.
Thank you, comrade. It is so true. Look, I think that Animal Farm and 1984 are the two most important books of our time. And why are they not being read in school? Right? Because I read.
You had to in school.
Yeah, well, I
and
did.
Brave New World as well.
I didn't read Brave New World at school, but they're two that I remember from back in the day. And I've asked a couple of people of younger ages now, and they've never heard of these books.
Yeah.
So
No.
Tells you a lot.
Tells you a lot.
Certainly does.
Then you move on to this, where Trump has kind of indicated the influence that Trump will have on Europe is going to be fascinating. Trump is due to roll up in London in the next few days. So they're already making preparations for that with security and everything, because they've got to send the Beast, his big car, over well before he arrives. So it's all there. They have two vehicles, and the police are doing their checks, security checks and all that around the place. But have a look at this little post here that was put out there on Trump talking on his social media channel, Truth. Ursula von der Leyen, the distinguished and highly respected president of the European Commission, and I have discussed the massive worldwide problem of missing children. Now, this is a big one. This is likewise a big subject with my wife, Melania. It is a subject at the top of all lists, and the world will work together to solve it, hopefully bring them home to their families. They've actually found a lot of those children since that was put out.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And and at least the result of them, some of them, of course, have sadly passed away. Those children,
it's horrendous.
But they've got results on thousands of kids that have gone missing. But there's going to be pressure on, of course, the European Union moving forward as to how these issues are resolved, particularly when the United States hold the biggest consumer base. And that's the economic leverage he's got in all these games.
Absolutely. And I've left that graphic up because Ursula, she's clearly got a lot on her mind at the moment, and they're not those missing children. She's looking at the total control. We're just living the life of the Wizard of Oz. Like, just pull back that curtain, and these small little psychopaths who are running the world. And they're just their thirst for control. It reeks of mental illness. We need to take control of our world again.
J.D. Vance's speech in I think it was February of this year really put it on highlight. There he is in Germany saying, you guys have become the very thing that you fought against 50 years ago. I mean, talk about a slap in the face. That was almost, calling them something that was undesirable.
It's kind of a case of, I nearly mentioned the war, but I got away with it.
And he was saying the issue is you are, fighting here against freedom of speech, values that we thought we held in common, where you can actually arrest someone who was outside an abortion clinic praying silently, and you've put her in prison for it. I mean, where is freedom of expression when it's gone to that level of control?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
So on that front, I believe that often the tariffs that have come out, maybe the issue will be that they're debating about is freedom of speech, that Trump will say, listen, this is an issue here. Have a look at the internal clean out that's going on. Back to the Fed here on this video. This is really, really insightful.
Mr. Secretary, I do need to pivot to a different question around Lisa Cook, governor at the Fed, who has been fired by the president for cause. She says she's not going and that he doesn't have the authority to do such a thing. You're obviously in the administration, close to the president, also understand how the wheels of just the machinery of the government work. Who pays her paycheck, for example? Is that something that has to come directly from the Fed? Is that something that Chair Powell will have to turn off, if you will? Does she have a pass to get into the building as somebody turns on or turns off? And who does that?
So, I don't know the details of who has her paycheck or not. But the issue is a federal government, a governor of the Federal Reserve, literally signs her name and commits mortgage fraud, right? It's alleged that she's committed mortgage fraud, and she says, I'm not going anywhere. Well, the crook always says, I'm not going anywhere. And why would anybody defend that? The real question should be, did she commit mortgage fraud, yes or no? And if you did commit mortgage fraud, please get out of the federal government, get out of the seat of the governor of the Federal Reserve, and go away. You don't deserve to be there if you've committed mortgage fraud. Right? It's black and white. If you've committed mortgage fraud, you should be a governor of the Federal Reserve.
This is a domino effect. One of the reasons I'm asking you this question about who needs to turn off her badge or turn off her paycheck is if the answer is that ultimately Chair Powell is the one responsible for that and he chooses not to, then the secondary question becomes, does the president try to fire him for cause?
Well, these are all what-if scenarios. The answer is the Department of Justice will go take this on and deal with this.
So this is fascinating, this tussle between who has jurisdiction over the Fed and who doesn't, because traditionally the Fed is an independent body that doesn't operate on there. However, the president does elect the chairman. So you've got this interesting power struggle where a board member has been seen to be doing the wrong thing and committing mortgage fraud. In other words, she bought a house allegedly and said, this is for my personal residence. And then a little while later bought another house and said, this is going to be personal residence to get better lending criteria from the banks. Ironic when you sit on the governor on the board there for a bank. And that's the tussle here is like, hey, she's committed this. Trump said he fired her. I'm not going. Who has jurisdiction over this? Who has power? There is this fight that is going on at the highest levels of finance. Power brokers are being done in terms of the presidency's power versus what is supposedly being a privatized independent body.
Yeah, and when you've got people with this position of power and they are very clearly using the laws for their own personal advantage, you got to think about the quality of these people and their ethics. These are the people who are controlling it. Just disgraceful, mate.
So that's been playing out. I love this. History shows what actually works. Trump has studied it. And of course, he explains it here. You've probably heard this before, but it's interesting in context of what is going on. Take a listen to this one.
So if you go back to 1913 is when they ended tariffs. We were the richest ever from 1850. It was all tariffs. We didn't have income taxes. From 1850 to 1913. In the 1887s, about 1887, they had the Great National Tariff Act. And it was a group of people that got together because our country was so rich, they didn't know what to do with the money. We had so much money, they didn't know what to do. It was a group of very prominent people that were set up to hand out money to everybody because we were the richest we ever were. Proportionately, we were in 1887, around that time, even in 1913. We ended them in 1913. How did that work out? And then we went to the income tax system, and then we had the Depression. And by the way, a lot of people try and say that, oh, tariffs with the Depression. No, they ended in 1913, and then we went to income tax, and then in 1929 you had the Depression. They did try and bring it back in 1931-32, but the Depression had long started, and this poor, beautiful nation was gone. It was gone. We suffered for 25 years. It took 25, 30 years to really recover from the Depression. and we don't ever want to see that happen again. The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs. I was able to say, well, we're not doing any business with you, or if you're going to war, we're putting a big tariff on you. And all of a sudden they announced that the war was settled. I settled 7 different wars, one going 31 years, look at the Congo and Rwanda, look at that, 31 years, 10 million people dead, I got it settled. And a little bit of that one, less than in some cases, had to do with trade and had to do with tariffs. So, tariffs are vital to our country. And just so you know, other countries use them on us, but I just use them a lot better. We're in a much better position. We have trillions of dollars coming into our country. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation, and we would be taken advantage of by every other nation in the world, friend and foe. We're not going to let that happen. And we have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly.
The fight that Trump's got right now is that one of the judges has said that the tariffs are illegal.
Yes.
And so it's gone to the Supreme Court. Now, tariffs are, of course, tax on imports into the United States. Now, this has been his big war, and how to finish wars is to use this weapon of tariffs, which I prefer than bullets and people dying in bloodshed.
Couldn't agree with you more. I just find this ridiculous. Okay, when you negotiate anything in life, okay, there's a power struggle. Okay, and America is the biggest economy and the biggest consumers in the world. If you want to do business with America, it makes sense to go along with these things, right? You want access to that market. This is how it works. And that judge who's actually said that tariffs are illegal. I mean, I don't understand. Obviously, I'm not an expert on US law, but it just doesn't seem to make any sense. We've always had tariffs.
I think it's just trying to slow the process down. And of course, how much of these judges have been influenced by the socialist regime. They're looking into all of that right now. But put it in context, right? So you've got the tariff battle going on right up to the Supreme Court to try to solve the debt issue. You've got the whole thing where the Fed was not invited to the table as far as cryptocurrency legislation was concerned.
So they're a little stung in the ego there.
Yeah. And then you've got, of course, Putin's advisor saying that it looks like if they become the crypto cloud controller of the world, that's how they'll settle their debt. And this is how the rest of the nations will have to play along. And you see what's unraveling here is this big tussle, the desperation to hang on to power by the globalists to push a socialist agenda on. And yet the humanity is fighting back for not just themselves, but for their kids and their grandchildren, as Katie Holmes put it so beautifully.
I think it's Hopkins, isn't it?
Hopkins, I'm sorry.
I think they actually the internet. Somebody on the internet's actually labelled it incorrectly.
I beg your pardon.
Maybe
Hopkins.
I'm wrong. Who knows?
But she put it really beautifully the way she put that. And so you see millions, records of being broken, of people showing up. You've got the conflict going on, of course, in Nepal at the moment, where Parliament has burnt down. And of course, Australia's got its own battles that it's fighting at the moment as well, in terms of, hey, we are tired of this immigration. Not that we're anti-immigration, but the fact that we need a time out on immigration.
Isn't it childish that we've got to give that disclaimer every time? We're all sitting here as immigrants, okay? We love this country, and we love the fact that it's got such an incredible history and future because of the mix of people we have.
Yeah.
Okay, it is a case of, hey, guess what? There's this thing called economics, and there's supply and demand. And if you haven't got enough houses, if you haven't got enough infrastructure, you haven't got enough systems in place, why would you possibly bring more people in? It is utter socialism. It is utterly, for several reasons. In the case of, obviously, the Labor government, because they are socialists, they are they are importing voters to keep themselves in power. So it's about their egos and the position of controlling power. But it is also, it gives them control of the finances as well.
And the flow-on effect, of course, the housing crisis is the hospital crisis at the moment.
It's horrendous.
Where you have a situation where you pose mandates and lost a lot of your workforce as far as the nurses were concerned, the doctors were concerned. You lost a percentage of your workforce there. And you've got people who are crowded in emergency wards. My mum, a couple of years ago, spent over 22 hours just waiting to be seen to after she had a fall, right?
22 hours.
Mum's I won't say, I'll be in big trouble if I say how old she is, but love your mum. But, this is the flow-on effect. Of course, these young migrants don't normally end up in emergency wards and hospitals, so they're not seeing these kind of situations play out. But they do when they have a baby.
Great
we
point.
don't have enough maternity wards to cope with a new population.
Just in the last few years, though, I have noticed it myself. I'm getting to that age and condition where things are starting to fall off. And so the body's sort of, a bit worn out. And so I've had to make more trips to the doctors in the emergency department than I have in previous parts of my life. Now, through my entire life, I never had to wait long. I went in, I was looked after. It was an efficient and smart flowing kind of service. It's an absolute joke now. You wait and you wait and you wait and you wait. I'm waiting as I say, right now, I'm waiting for an operation, 3-year waiting list for an operation. It's insane. And to have to live in pain, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also speaking for, I'm going to say hundreds of thousands of Australians who'd be waiting on this. It's completely unnecessary, and this is mismanagement by our government.
Oh, I saw that in the hospitals in the last few days of my dad's life. They couldn't get him out of emergency ward and give him his own room. He waited there for a few days, and it was like, really? It's crazy. And he had private health cover.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Private health cover, and they couldn't get him his own room. That's how bad the situation is. So it's a big wake-up call on so many fronts as these tussles go. We need prosperity, because when we all prosper, crime is reduced. People can afford homes. People don't feel the necessity to steal to actually feed their families. And I think this is the wake-up call as we see this push. And, of course, the whole Charlie Kirk incident surrounded all this in terms of his fight for freedom of speech, and to have open debate on college campuses highlights it's enormous how the world has embraced this. Even in places like South Korea, they're holding vigils to remember the guy, memorials and marching for him. Where culturally you go, really? And there they are holding banners of Trump standing up and going, fight, 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 with blood streaming down his face after he was shot. It's just extraordinary.
What terrifies me, it is. But what terrifies me is how brainwashed, and this is not a go at people, right? This is a go at media. So many of the population believe the lies about Trump, believe the lies about Charlie Kirk, right? If you spend 5 minutes of genuine research, you will realize this is completely false. I am so sick and tired of the Western media being so dishonest, and I will down the barrel. I mean, live here in Western Australia. In Western Australia, we have a complete, as far as I'm concerned, it is a monopoly of the news. It is run by Seven West Media, which is the West Australian. We have effectively one newspaper. He owns, when I say he, the gentleman who owns it is called Kerry Stokes. He owns a big bunch of all the local papers, so there is no community newspapers anymore. It's owned by effectively one man. You know what? There used to be laws. There used to be legislation to stop this from happening. Okay, you could only own a certain amount of the media. Right now, we have. I said this online. Okay, we need to abolish. I mean this. We need to just abolish elections in Western Australia. Don't have elections anymore. Just ask Kerry Stokes, who needs to be our premier. Have him decide, because he controls the media. Whatever the people who are paid by him tell the main of society to vote for, that's who they vote for. And it doesn't matter if it's a lie. It doesn't matter if it's propaganda. I noticed in America a law changed back in 2012, allowing under the Obama presidency, literally removing the restrictions from media on propaganda. So making propaganda legal again. Like, clearly, if they put the law in place in the first place, they know that there was a problem. In 2012, that's what happened. There you go. You know, that the left, the Democrats in the US did that. We've got this problem in Australia. It needs to be spoken about. I don't know Kerry Stokes personally. I don't know or care about his politics, but I think, well, actually, I do care about his politics. Stop butting in. You shouldn't have that kind of control.
Media traditionally was always about both sides of the story and presenting both views.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we've had is just, I mean, I've wondered about this sometimes. Is it because we are in the age of the internet now, where you can get more stories and more truth leaking through, and so we're more well aware of that, where it was so controlled prior to the internet, right? Excuse me, there were only a few avenues that you could go. Movies, television, radio, newspaper, magazines, That was it. There was
Yeah.
nothing online, so to speak, in terms of coverage. And now you've got a lot more independent journalists reporting what it is. I mean, gosh, I sent you a video over the weekend on the uprising in Nepal. That was done by a YouTuber who covers a tourist type channel, right?
There you go.
Right. And he just happened to be there on the day this uprising occurs, edited the videos, had over 20 million views on this video. So the power of the journalist has gone to the everyday social media influencer or uploader or channel controller, right?
Sure.
And of course, governments are going nervous about this because we don't control the narrative so much anymore.
Yeah. I thoroughly agree with everything you've just said. But I will wind the clock back, 90 odd years to that movie with The Wizard of Oz, like where they laid it in front of us. This has always been the case. I used to believe that the media used to be honest, as I say, you worked in it, all of that kind of thing. I believed they were there as a service. I believed in all the integrity that most people believe. All right. The most people believe you watch the ABC, theoretically you should get the facts. What a load of rubbish. I think for the last 100 odd years, okay, we'll go back to the turn of the last odd century, okay, back to the year 1900. From that point onwards, it has been nothing but a farce, nothing but control. I think we need to really look at history and wonder what actually really happened.
So the globalists are kind of pulling the strings, or have been, and the politicians are the puppets. And this sort of dynamic has been going on. And of course, they say follow the money. Well, that's what they're doing right now, given that this assassination has occurred in the United States. Was it funded by someone behind it all? Follow the money path. And who is influencing US politics? Who's influencing our education campuses on colleges that, kids are paying thousands upon thousands of dollars and getting a major debt even before they start their careers, just so they can have an income. And I think, I remember back in the 90s what it was like if you were male and you were white and you questioned the feminist rhetoric and that sort of stuff, man, which I did, and was a Christian, boy, the knives are out for you, right?
Oh, yeah. You are the triple threat right there. Come on.
Except that, in the alumni handbook, you're not allowed to be sexist. You have to respect all religions and all that sort of stuff. But there was these exceptions and compromises. That was the reality of what I face as a young person. I can't imagine what it's like for our young people now who are trying to get an education through these organizations. I think we've got to have a big look at our education system.
I think it needs a massive cleanup. I mean, the fact that there is gender identity classes and how the hell is that a degree? Honestly, I can narrow it down really fast for you. Male, female. There you go. There's your degree. Bugger off. This is insanity, and this is people wanting power and control and money and all that kind of thing. But this is, again, we have let the lunatics run the asylums, and today's university is the asylum.
Well, it's interesting too that this Charlie Kirk death has united a lot of people. And I thought, oh boy, when this occurred, I thought they have woken up the sleeping giant now, because young people are passionate in the United States and fearless. And look at what might occur now once they get over the grieving part, the shock, first of all, then the grieving, and then anger often kicks in. But you don't see the right over in the United States looting the streets, causing riots, smashing businesses, having to, just tear up any car or vehicle that's in sight. You're not seeing that kind of chaos going on.
No businesses had to board up their windows.
Yeah, it's kind of like, so who does that? Who does that and who funds that? Those are the questions that are being asked right now. As the darkness gets darker, the light shines brighter. And it's going to be fascinating to see how these indirectly affect economies moving forward. Are we expecting more upheaval? Yeah, it's going to be a rocky, bumpy ride, I think.
All right, let me throw you a curly one. After we've just seen, Dr. Evil in a dress, Ursula, whatever her name is, doing her thing, basically, digging in her heels and sort of saying, we're Europe and we'll do it our way. Well, again, they want access to the US market. Now, do you think that they will actually, do you think they'll hold tough, or do you think that ultimately the US government will actually be successful, quite frankly, in bringing back free speech by using economic means to control,
I think it has. I mean, the battle was always going to be the Goliath had to go down in America, right? And we saw that play out in November of 2024.
Sure.
And we've seen the changes just in, what are we, 9 months in now, of big overhaul going on. I think the left are desperate to hang on to power, and this has highlighted the desperation there. I think they're nervous in Europe and realizing, hey, we can't actually roll out the plan in the time that we thought we could and how we wanted to, because the big issue for Europe is defense. And they have relied through the NATO agreement with the United States Defense Forces to come to their aid, lest they have a big war breakout.
Sure.
And America's going, you know what? You need to be more independent and fight your own battles here.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking a step back. If we're not sharing our common values, why should our American boys and girls risk their lives for your causes if you're going to play these kind of politics without sharing common values that we thought we had? And that's a fair argument. And also, it's made them very nervous with, of course, the battle that's been going on in Europe at this time.
Yes, absolutely. I think for far too long that everyone's seen the Americans as very much the police, for the world, and Europe has sat on their laurels and spent nowhere near the amount that they need on defence, and the arrogance of that. And I also want to say this: whenever I'm certainly speaking for myself. When I say I'm saying something negative about what's going on in Europe or Asia or this or that, okay, I'm not talking about the people. This is so important, because there's so much hate and divide here. Okay, I've got so many friends from all around the world. I talk to people of different cultures. It's ridiculous to think that. I'm talking about regimes. I was going to say governments, but they're not governments. They're regimes.
It's politics.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
So the people in power are the ones who are bringing this. I never want anybody to have an attitude or a negative attitude against people of those nations.
And why we're bringing politics up so much on an economic show is because politics is a direct relationship with economics. 3 things affect the stock market, for example: politics, economy, and interest rates, which the Fed is going to be reviewing. Are they going to drop the interest rates in the next few days? Well, that remains to be seen. If they do, there are concerns that it might weaken the US dollar, and the flow-on effect to Australia might be really, really interesting in terms of imports, in terms of how the Aussie dollar responds to that. And the Australian stock market often follows what the US does.
Yeah,
so
very true.
There are, the Fed's been going, but inflation, we're nervous about inflation. We want to get it down to 2%. I've seen evidence of suggesting that Jerome Powell is not a fan of Trump, and why would you be when Trump's been going around saying he's incompetent? I want to fire him and get rid of him. So I can understand it. I get it. But is he just holding up and keeping the interest rate as where it is at right now?
Okay,
I don't know.
I'm going to ask the most naive question in the world. Why do we need inflation?
Why do we need it? It's not that we need it. It's something that occurs because what happens is, as money supply becomes more available, people start to choose more for prices. We see prices go up. So, for example, housing. If there's more money to be loaned out, more people get approved for home loans, stimulates the economy. Businesses get loans, they employ more people. People are earning more, they'll spend more in housing, and the housing market goes up. And of course, the cost of living rises. So that's why it's one of these effects of the economic system.
Yeah.
So the Fed likes to keep it around 2 to 3%. They're now going for the lower one, 2%. And Trump's going, listen, we got a bit of a homeless crisis here in the United States. And a lot of people could afford their own home if interest rates are a little bit lower. We get them off the streets in their own place.
Of course we could. And I don't want to dump this one on you. Perhaps we could talk about this in another show, completely up to you, but in the future. But just before we went on air, I actually noticed a story that was basically there is an Australian newspaper who is saying that there's a great risk right now that housing values are going to plummet, and they're talking massive percentages, right? Maybe that's something we could talk about in the future.
We can look at that.
A bit more research, because again, why I'm kind of bringing it up is, again, is this more media manipulation of the market, or who's pulling the strings?
I think the Australian housing market is very much controlled. Very much controlled in terms of land release. We should not have homelessness in Australia.
No
we
reason
really
for it.
shouldn't. With the wealth that we've got in terms of our minerals and resources and agriculture, we've got the best of the land there is, and yet we've got this homelessness going on.
Crazy.
So it's just absurd, and a lot of it is manipulation in terms of the housing land releases and what will they allow us to do.
Yeah, and a lot of people have got the perception that homelessness is just people laying on the streets, or some people with alcohol problems, drug problems. What a load of rubbish. Okay, we right now in Australia, obviously there are people who through circumstance choose to live that way, and that's their choice. But there are right now families living in tents, families living in cars. This is a first world country, a country with has resources you can't imagine the wealth that this country has. We give all our money away on gas. We do this, we do all these incredibly bad things, or our government does. There is no reason why everyday Australians and working Australians should be homeless. It is sick.
Well, one of the things that we could fix some of this housing crisis is to repair marriages and make it far less, make it more favorable for partners to not have to both be working economically to put food on the table. Take that stress off them.
Yeah, but there's crazy talk. Come on, if you break up a family, now you need 2 houses. Okay, now you need an extra car. You need an extra power bill, an extra water bill, an extra this bill, right? It is so good for the economy to break up families. I tongue is so far in my cheek. It just disgusts me. It really disgusts me because, okay, life should be about relationships with others. It should be about love. It should be about, encouraging people to be the very best they can. Yep. It should not be about dollars and cents.
Yeah, we've got both partners working, and the kids are being brought up by institutions, which of course the government controls.
Yeah.
And it's not just from the education side in terms of going to school, but it's before and after school care in between. I've seen kids go to these institutions from 6 a.m. in the morning and get picked up at 6:30 at night. I mean, that's not much of a family life 5 days a week.
Oh, look at this. Yes. Oh, thank you, Taz, for this fantastic comment. I think if we got rid of a lot of Airbnbs, there would also be a lot less homeless people. I know some people are living in a caravan in their relative's backyard. It's a common thing. It really is a common thing. The caravan thing at the moment. I've certainly been touched with it myself. So, when my house burnt down, like trying to find a rental, trying to find somewhere to live was just incredibly hard.
Airbnb, she raised an interesting one. There's 2 sides of that. There is the side where people make investments into these kind of properties and then want to do it on Airbnb numbers. And that's a financial decision. It's I hear what she's saying, but there's always 2 sides to it as well.
Yeah.
You've got to have the investor rewarded as well.
Look, and on that one, Taz, while I understand and from a human point of view, I completely agree. Yeah, look, also people have taken big mortgages out on their houses to make that financially viable.
I mean, Airbnb affects me and benefits me. I'm going to say it out front, right? I've got a family of 6. Do you know how hard it is to find a hotel for a family of 6? We've got to rent a house, right? For a few days. So I understand what she's saying, though. She has a very valid point. It's a funny game, that one. I was wondering if are there any more comments you want to cover?
No, you go.
I was just going to say, why don't we go to just to finish on, of course, Tulsi Gabbard's comment here. This is at the Kennedy Center, where they're paying tribute to his life. A lot of high-profile politicians are there. We're hearing even Robert Kennedy speak about him, the press secretary. This is Tulsi's tribute. I thought she said it really, really well. Take a look at this.
Big fan of hers. The moment she appeared on the scene, I just thought, you get it.
Those who are full of anger and hopelessness and hate right now, some of them protesting outside this hall today, unfortunately, they do not have the spiritual happiness that Charlie experienced. They're empty. And this is where their anger is coming from. It is their rejection of God, their desire to be God, and therefore they have made God their enemy. I have hope today that every one of us will do our best to shine the light of God's love in our lives and in our work, that we will treat each other with aloha, respect, and stand strong and unshakable in the defense of our God-given rights and freedoms. May God bless you all, and may God bless this great nation. Aloha.
And I think Tulsi has summed it up really, really well as to the state of the world right now. Good versus evil, where we're fighting for freedom here. We're seeing this debate go on against the globalist agenda, who have poisoned the minds through the false prophets, the mainstream media, and basically been polluting minds for so many decades now on their propaganda and how life should be. And now it's come to crunch time. And it's been highlighted here how dark it's gotten, the extents those will go to shut out the truth and shut out the light. And I think she's loved that message of hope, where, you know what, there is hope here. Yes, we miss this freedom fighter, we miss Charlie Kirk, we miss the influence that he had on his life, but what an example for us to live our lives with courage, with bravery, and to do our life assignment.
What he said. That's perfect, mate. Thank you very much for being part of the Greater Wealth here on Edge Radio Australia.